Hello and welcome to 52 Weeks. This week we're going to continue the discussion of Chapter 5, Housing, and in this chapter I've split it up into 6 segments to make it a little bit easier to digest. That was looking at the introduction, number 2, the building typology, number 3, building statistics, number 4, issues in housing, number 5, observations, and number 6, building blocks of Harrisburg.
This is our last segment this week to wrap up discussion of building statistics. This is looking at real estate taxes. We're starting off here, and out of the comp plan, 97% of the homes with a mortgage pay over $1,500 in taxes. The highest median real estate taxes on mortgage property in the city is located in Census Tract 8, which is considered uptown west of 3rd Street. You can see where that's listed, shown there on the map. Data continues. Property without a mortgage, the focus of downtown is about 50% of the buildings pay $1,500 or more. However, nearly 25% do not pay any real estate taxes at all. And that's one thing that we know as a city is that taxable property is at about 50% because of state or local government buildings. In the comp plan, even though the date's not in there, how many years, it's known that Dauphin County has not reassessed taxes on existing property in several years. And I think it happened in the late 2000s. Try to have that list in the notes of this video. So why is the reassessment important? Yes, it affects people paying taxes, existing property owners. And one thing to be thinking about is how schools are funded in that process too, looking at property tax. This is a key thing to be digging into or looking at as a community, but as a comp plan states in here, to maintain property tax revenues, the city has increased millage, thus property tax on new construction is comparatively high. Continuing that, we should be thinking about, is that a good thing, and running studies to see if that's the best course of action. The review in the comp plan is to encourage new construction. The property tax on new construction needs to be brought into balance with existing property. This will help spur some of the more new construction that's happening around the areas, particularly where there's empty lots. The most competitive approach for city would be to reassess all buildings and lower the millage, given current appreciation. It's city's best interest to reappraise regularly, at least every 5 years. So that should be on our cycle, so that we're doing this and monitoring it and seeing these changes happen as well. This will capture the valuation of revitalization of current housing stock in concert with substantial appreciation over the next few decades, while property values are restored to truly reflect market rates. So this is a steady plan to try to get both these things back on track, the property values and the assessment value. In terms of new construction, back in when this was written in 2015, as the plan was written, the Harrisburg area has having the strongest year since 2004, and the number of residential building permits issued according to the latest data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Through May of 2015, the Harrisburg-Carlisle metropolitan area has reported 708 permits, which is up from 397 the first 5 months of 2014. And looking at the 2018 numbers, it's pretty amazing to see that now it's up to 2013 new permits. And then I separated by what type of unit, whether it's 1 unit, 2 unit, or up to 5+. You can see where the focus has been. We're looking at 602 permits for 4-unit homes. As the comp plan states, there's clear demand for rental apartments and condominiums. The city lacks enough new market rate apartments to satisfy demand. And here's residential building permits that are there just as a list from what we talked about before. These are things to be thinking about in the supply and demand within the city. Counting new permits, the permit value totaled nearly $110 million through May of 2015. Again, this is back when the comp plan was drafted. That was up from $75.2 million in the same period in 2014. The multifamily permits accounted for 251 of the 708 permits. Also, there was a majority of single unit permits. So the comp plan then looks at Harrisburg, showing that a fraction of new building permits are happening there. In the Great Recession of 2009, the new building, residential buildings stopped. In 2008, there were 51 residential building permits. In 2012 and 13, there were 0 new residential building permits. So for comparison, in 2011, in the Harrisburg-Carlisle Metropolitan Statistical Area, there were 752 permits during that year. So vastly different in what's happening in Harrisburg versus what's happening around in the suburbs. As the comp plan has new construction goals in here, the goal for the comprehensive plan is to identify strategic locations for the construction of a variety of high-quality, well-managed apartments in various parts of the city. The reason being is that these new buildings are strategic components of neighborhood revitalization, providing a location for retail and service center for the community. This is important because if the desire of the sustainable city is to happen, this is consistent with economic stability of the region, assure that new construction is designed and built as permanent sustainable structures, and limit housing model on low cost, the stick-built and suburban style building types. So we want to try to not bring in a new model that is detrimental to the existing context of higher valued buildings and the materials and labor that was put into them. So that's the thing we should be considering in looking at a sustainable city. And one may ask, why no suburban style structures? There's a variety of reasons. We look at they don't help maintain long-term effort to control deterioration and blight because they're not exactly as the current buildings. So we recognize that we can't build like it was. Well, we can, but it's expensive. But we can try to put in a valuation that is equally as important as the buildings that are on the street. Nothing is worse than traveling through, and again, I was at West Philly and going through Philly and following what's happening in Philly when there's a lack of respect, so to speak, within the urban street of new housing put in that just does not fit at all, meaning that the construction type, the vinyl siding, the types of materials just then totally negate the entire block. And there's a contrast and a dissonance between those two types of buildings. They're not higher quality considering the proximity to other houses. That's exactly one of the things in West Philly. And they're not considering the higher density living as fire and life safety issues increase. So we also have to be having construction that deals with life safety, but also understand that the structural issues as well in safety. Comp plan contingent on the higher quality housing requires slightly increased construction costs, sales prices, and rents. These need to be justified by convenience and quality of life benefits provided by ready access to transit and a vibrant community commercial area. So these are things that other cities are picking up on. Again, the question is affordability in these decision-making process. And this comes from balancing out the needs of a diverse population within a neighborhood and understanding the who can own, what are the wages, and what is the economic background of those in these neighborhoods. Because we need to come together to actually acknowledge this and work together to look at solutions that are contextual to that particular neighborhood and look at long-term benefits of the quality of life and access to better transit and also schools. So we build back into the places and also building the social capital in the process as well. In getting to the wrap-up of the building statistics, the idea is to increase the marketable housing units. The greatest value to the city would be significantly upgrade existing houses to high standards of efficiency and finish. That takes a process, and that takes an education in trades and apprenticeship to do that process in that rebuilding. It can be done. There's nothing that can be stopping this. It's the will of the residents from within to set up the mechanisms, focus on people in place, again, triple bottom line, and let the economics of it begin to build. Housing reinvestment policy should be coupled with a community reinvestment plan. This includes the revitalization of several things, and this ties into, again, that triple bottom line. Community reinvestment plan should be focusing on the small area plans, the neighborhood plans, and this is in the community commercial centers, new housing typologies in older neighborhoods, streetscape improvements, infrastructure refreshment, and local schools function as community enhancing assets. So in ending this building statistics and everything that we've come through before, this is really the crux of things, is now it's in the hands of the community to do this work. This is in the small area plans, in the neighborhood plans, and here's what items are to be looking at and building on. All right, and you work on this with this building the social capital as well as building up the place. The economics will follow and finding ways to fund this. This is going to be the challenge for the next decade to get things right, or at least put the strategic plan in place so that this is just something that just happens, that it's guided through the process. This is kind of the scariest thing with the comp plan, is that no one's really looking at this right now. Or as I've reached out to the Planning Bureau, is that there are no funds to do this. Everybody's looking at it from, oh, we need a federal grant, we need a local grant or some sort of grants to fund this. I honestly believe this can start from a community planning process. There's no reason any citizen planning projects in the community planning toolbox that this can't be done. It takes a few people to knit things together and begin to focus on, this is what we want in our community, these are the action plans, and then we're going to figure out how to fund them This is something that, yes, it takes funding to do, but if you get the people and the places being refocused and put value on that, the investment is going to follow, because a plan is put out there and there's a will within the people to see that plan through and to work with others to put that through. So this segment wraps up the section of building statistics. Next week, we'll be getting into demographics and looking at some of the data that was collected in that section of the Chapter 5 housing. Thanks again for listening. Take care.